Hello and welcome to the OMGenomics show. In this episode, I'm doing a quick introduction to Bash, which will show you how to use the command line, which is also known as the terminal on a Mac, to do some basic data analysis, how to navigate, how to use pipes, how to use a combination of cut, sort, and unique to count the number of entries of each type of data in a data set. And this is going to be a really nice introduction. It's also going to show you a quick trick for making navigation much easier on the command line and just getting you started with that. So let's hop into the command line and take a look. So let's start by opening the terminal. And since I'm on a Mac, the terminal can be found by going Command Space and typing in terminal. And you should see it popping up there, and then you can just hit enter, and it's going to open the terminal for you. Now, if you want to keep this terminal window so it's one of the programs that you can find in your bar over here, then you can just drag it up. And so let's do that right here. I'll put it right there. So now we have our terminal. And first of all, you also want to go and find this page right here. So this is at omgenomics.com/bash-intro right there. So if you just go to that site, then you can follow along and you'll have the code, and you're going to need to copy and paste some of this just 2 times during this little video. So I really suggest that you follow along and you find this blog post, and you also go and actually follow along with the steps that I'm doing, and pause the video once in a while to experiment on your own and just see that you can do the same thing that I'm doing on your own as well. So we have the terminal open now, and I'm going to show you how to navigate around your file system, but first I'm going to help you make a little change that will make navigating easier and make it easier for you to use the command line and see what's going on. So the first thing is that here we don't at all see which folder we're in. We just see like the name of the computer, in this case Maria's MacBook, and this is the username that I have on my computer. And then there's this little $sign which just shows where you start typing a new command. But what we're going to do is change what this looks like so we can always see what folder we're in on the computer while we're navigating. So the way that you do that on a Mac is you go Touch, and then you do this little squiggly, which is found over the Tab key if you go Shift and then hit the button over the Tab. And then /, the one by the question mark, if you have an American keyboard anyway, and Bash Profile. So Touch just means that we make the file if it doesn't exist already. And then we also need to say open that file. And now a really useful thing that you can do on the command line is that if you hit the arrow key that is up, then you can get the same command you had before. And then you can go to the beginning of that line and replace touch with open. Another fun thing is that you can switch between the beginning and end of the line. So if I want to go to the end of the line, I hold down Control and hit E, and that goes to the end. I can also hold down Control and hit A to go to the beginning of the line, which makes it really fast to replace things. And now once you have open /bash profile, then you can hit enter. And now that's opened this file in TextEdit. Now, something to be aware of is that when a file starts with a dot like this, it is a hidden file, so you can't see it in your file system. There's a way to make them visible, but you can always access them from the command line very easily. Yeah, so the way that we want to do this change that we want to make is that you can just copy this, and this is where you want to go to this blog post here, omgenomics.com/bash-intro. And copy this text right here, and then just paste that into your Bash profile. If you already have other things in your Bash profile, that's fine. You can just add this at the end. And now it's edited, and I'm gonna save it. So Command S on a Mac. Cool. So once we have that, we're following along in the blog post here. We can quit out of that. And we want to quit out of the terminal as well, so the change that we made has taken effect. So notice that here everything is black. So if I quit out of that, this is where it's good that I have it saved in my bar. Now when I open it again, I can see that there's colors now. And there's this little squiggly right here. And that actually means that that's the path to the directory I'm in right now. And right now I'm in the home directory. So what I want to do is go to the desktop folder. And the way that we do that is we do cd, which means change directory. This is something you're going to do all the time, but it's right here for you. If you forget what these different commands do, you can just basically play with them or look them up. But cd means change directory. Squiggly slash, that means the home directory. So that's the very first place that you end up. So right now we're in the home directory and we're changing directory into the desktop. And if we hit enter, now this path up here has changed, so it says squiggly slash desktop. And now what we can do on the desktop is to list the files that you have on your desktop. So I've cleaned mine up, so there's nothing in here, but when I type ls, you'd be able to see the files that are on your desktop. Now, following along over here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a folder, which is mkdir, which stands for make directory. Everything is super fast here, super shortened, because you do this so often that you really don't want to type out make directory every single time. So we just go make directory, my folder, and if you hit enter, then I can actually see that my folder just appeared on my desktop. And if I now go ls, I should be able to see my folder. Notice that the colors here make it really easy to distinguish which are these lines we are working on and which ones are just the output. And okay, so now that we have my folder, I want to cd into my folder. And since I have this as one of the things that can get listed, I can also just type in the beginning of it and then hit the tab key, and that'll complete it, whatever it is. If there's multiple things on there, it'll show the options if you hit tab twice. But if there's only one thing, it'll just finish it for you right there. And so now I can hit enter. So now we see that the change has happened here. We have now moved into desktop / my folder. We can move back out of it again if we want to by going cd and then ... Always make sure to put a space here, by the way. So ... means go up one level. So now we're back out to my desktop. And we can go back into my folder, just go like my or something. And if you need to keep typing in order for tab complete to work, then you just keep typing the word until it's sure which one you mean. And now we're in here again. There's nothing inside of my folder, but another thing we can do is we can make another directory. So let's go make dir another folder once you're inside of my folder. And now we've made that, I'm gonna list again. I can see there's a my folder. If we cd into this other folder, again, the path has updated here. And so this can become a really long path after a while if you go many directories deep. And now if I want to go all the way out to my desktop again, I can do ... to go up one directory. And I can actually just put a slash and another ... You can't just put 4 dots, you do have to put the slash there. But if you do that, then you get up 2 levels. So you get out of another folder into my folder, and then out of my folder into the desktop. So now we're there. So that's kind of the basics of how you do navigation and how you can make directories and move in and out of them. Now let's make a file now. So if you just want to create an empty file, which is sometimes useful, then you can say touch, and I'm just going to say myfile.txt. Now if I list, I can see that there's a file called myfile, and there's the folder called myfolder. So ls lists everything that's in the current directory. Now I can open myfile.txt, and that just is going to open it in TextEdit again up here. And now you can enter something into the file if you want. So let's keep that open. And I also mentioned a couple of other options here, ways that you can edit the file. So there's a program called Nano on many systems, which allows you to edit the file as well. And that may be something that you want to do if you're not on a Mac or something and you don't have a GUI environment, you don't have this graphical user interface. Let's say you're SSH'd into your institution's cluster or something and you want to access the files, then you can still follow along here by using Nano or even Vim, which is VIM. But you may have to look up in Google how to use these. Nano, you just use it to open like this, and you can make some changes. And if you then want to exit, you just go Control X, you hit yes, or you hit Y to say yes. It asks you what the file name is, so you can change it, and if you're happy with it, you just hit enter. And now let's take a look. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to say open my file. Oh yeah, this is a good moment here. So when I typed in my, and I wanted to tab complete, notice it did this little, it blacked out for a second. If you have your sound on, it might actually sound the bell. Let me show you that. Yeah, so do you hear that sound? That's annoying. So I sometimes just turn that off. You can turn that off in the settings in the terminal as well. But it's doing this because there's two different things that we can do after typing my_f. So now that I've done it twice, if I do this, it just gets as far as it can until it hits a branch where there's multiple options. If you hit tab again, it's going to show you what those options are if you hit tab twice. And so at this point, I go, okay, I want it to open my file. So I can just hit I, and after that, if I hit tab, now it can autocomplete entirely. Then I hit enter, and now we see the things that we entered when we were in Nano. And I'm just going to delete that. So that's an option if you don't want to use text edit or you can't. So what I'm going to do here is actually enter this information in here. I made a little practice data set with Pokemon in it that we can play with. So let's do that, and I'm just going to save that. Just like Command S here in text edit, close that. And now let's look at how we can view files from the command line. What I often end up doing is typing ls whenever I'm in a folder just to remind myself what was actually in there. One of the things you can do with the file in order to view it is we can cat myfile.txt, and that's just going to print out all of the contents of that file to the terminal. Now you can see if this file is much longer than it is right now, then it might crowd out your whole terminal and you can't see all of the information. So sometimes you just want to see the head of the file, which is the first 10 lines by default. And if you really want to get a different number of lines, then you could say print the first 5 lines, for instance. And then it's just going to print the first 5 lines of the file. This can come in handy sometimes if you want to sample the first 1,000 elements of a file or something like that and do something with that information after that. But I'll show you some of the things you can do with passing information from one program to another, which is where the terminal and where Bash gets really powerful. All right, so the next thing that we can do is there's this program called less, which should almost always be available. And I like to use it with this -S option, which is really helpful when the lines are long because it prevents them from wrapping to the next line, which can get really confusing. Like if you're looking at a really long file where each line is very long, then it's going to be very hard to see. But less-s is usually what I do to prevent wrapping. And so this is going to show it in a very neat output. And we're kind of in a different screen here where we can't see our other commands right now. But the advantage of this is that you can look at the file, you hit Q in order to quit out of less. And now it hasn't printed a lot of information onto here. So you viewed it, but you haven't clogged up your terminal at all. You can still see what you were doing and kind of view the output from there. So that's what I usually like to do. Now, let's do a fun exercise here where I show you how powerful Bash really is. And we're going to do that by looking at these Pokemon types. and counting how many of each type there are. So the second column here contains these interesting types like grass, fire, water, bug, and for Pikachu, electric. And I don't care so much about the third column because many of them will have none. Some of them will say like poison or flying Pokemon or something. But let's look at the second column and see how many Pokemon we have of each type in this file. So the first thing we're going to do is just print out all of them. So this gives us the entire output of the file. Now, here comes the really fun part in Bash. There's this character called a pipe, which you get by you hold down Shift and you hit the button that's usually right above your Enter key. So this is called a pipe. It's really important in Bash because it unlocks all of these awesome combinations of different commands that you can do. So what I'm doing is I'm printing out all of the output, but instead of just displaying it on the screen, I'm piping it to this other command called cut, which allows you to take a certain column of your data. In this case, I want column 2. So I do cut, and then I put a dash or hyphen, and this is a lowercase f. Put a space, and then a 2. And so this means I want to cut out field 2 from this data. And when I do that, I get electric, grass, fire, water. So these are the same things that were in the second column before. And now we're just getting that. So that's not terribly useful on its own, unless you just want to simplify what you're seeing in your data, which can be good. But what you really want to do is start to combine this data so that we can get the counts. Now, if you have an issue having copied this in sometimes, if your computer has converted the tabs to spaces, for instance, then you could be having some issues where it's showing all of the output even though you did cut field 2. And if that happens to you, then you just put this extra information in between. And this is a command that evens out weird spacing. So if you ever encounter spacing issues where you have some kind of oddly delimited file that's just like with odd spacing instead of having tabs, then this will allow you to fix that. You can also use it to take away commas or something, but you'd have to put a little extra here. And I can show you that in another video another time, how to deal with really badly formatted data. But this is a hack in case you have an issue with that. And you can read about what this does, but it's fairly simple, even though it's very cool. So now remember, we can use the up key now. So I want to enter unique-c after this, and I can do that by hitting the up arrow key. And then I'll just put a space, I'll put another pipe, and then I'm gonna do unique-c. This is a Q right here, sometimes they look confusing. And when I get that, this is gonna consolidate all of them. So here, each of these is just listed once, but then there's 2 that say bug next to each other, so it consolidates them. So this is 2 bugs right next to each other, or right after each other, and then that shows up here, 2 bugs. And so it's just consolidated all the things that are next to each other, but we would actually like to consolidate all the ones of different types, because if you notice, bug actually shows up here twice, but also here another twice, and here 2 times again. And the normal ones are also not getting consolidated completely. And this is because they're not right after each other. So unique only consolidates the ones that come right after each other in a group. So instead you want to put in one command first to sort these so that all the bugs are going to be right after each other before they get combined and consolidated by the unique command. Oh, and by the way, here, if you don't put -c, it won't give you the counts. It'll just give you this second column here. So it'll consolidate them without counting, which is sometimes what you want if you're just trying to get rid of redundant entries in your data. But we want to count in this case, so that's what the -c does. Now, if I go up here and I do sort first, then I'm going to show you what that output looks like. So now we have all the bugs after each other, electric, all the fire after each other, great. And if I then if I then pipe that to unique-c, now we get the much more consolidated count. So we can see that we have a total of 6 bugs, 1 electric, I bet that's Pikachu, and this is what we got. Now, if I also want to sort this first, if I want to sort them by the first column, because let's say you have a much bigger data set that's harder to just eyeball it, then you can actually pipe this and you can sort it by the first column. And this is how you can sort by column 1. Sort does this thing where it's kind of K for column here. Sometimes it's different between different commands, like cut dash, it's dash F to say what field you want to cut by. In sort, it's dash K. And this is just different for different commands, but you can always look this up, and I'll show you how to look up really easily what each command does. But in sort dash K, you want to say 1, 1, so it only sorts by the first column. And then you can put, I'll show you what this does actually. If we just sort by the first one, then it sorts them alphabetically. So we do want to sort numerically, otherwise you might get 1, 10, 11, 12, and then 2 much later if you have bigger numbers. But if you sort numerically, then they sort numerically. In this case, it's the same. Then you can use R to reverse it if we want the highest number to be at the top of the list. And there we go. So now we've sorted this by the first number. And this can be really useful. You can actually sort by multiple columns at once if you just put spaces and you have one cluster to say how you want to sort each column, whether it's numeric or not. And I have an example of this here, where if you instead did this on another file, you could say, I want to sort the first column alphabetically, and then I want to sort the second column numerically. The 1, 1 here means from column 1 to column 1. So you could say I want to sort the first 3 columns numerically, and that would be dash K 1, 3 N. So that would do that for you. Okay, so it's time to wrap up for this time, but I want to show you, now that we have accomplished our Pokemon type counting, that was a quick introduction to how you can use Bash, and even using this piping thing, which is what makes Bash so powerful. There's a lot more things we can cover here, which I'll probably end up doing in other videos. And I'm also just going to show you before we wrap up that you can just type in history to see all of the commands you've used. So if you don't remember what you've done, then it's all contained in here, and you can just see what you've been doing. And some of this was me testing the code, but this is most of what we did today right here. So you can do that if you ever forget what you've been doing. The way that you can get help is many commands allow you to do sort -- help. So you just put the name of the command here. So if you want help with the sort command, you can try that. Not all commands are going to give you that, but what it does is it'll usually show you what each of these things does. Here, what we used was -n for numeric sort and -r for reverse. But in order to figure out how to do these clusters and multiple columns, what I originally did was actually go on Google and search for, Bash or Unix, how to sort by multiple columns. So if you Google something like that, then you'll get better help for really using these commands very effectively. And also when you want to string commands together to do something that you don't really know how to do with just one command, then that's a really great place to get help. So if you're just curious what each of the options do, then this is where you can do it. Just go sort -- help or unique -- help. So in this case, unique doesn't have a help option, which perfectly demonstrates the next thing. If you want help with something and it doesn't have a -- help option, then you can say man for manual, and then just type in unique and hit enter. And so this will give you the same kind of information, usually formatted a bit differently, but if you look through this, it'll tell you what what each of these kind of options do. So like here, -F with a number, this is which fields you want to show and which fields you want to ignore. So that's perfect. And yeah, it's just, if you need any more help, just look at Google and go to Stack Overflow. But if you have any general questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. And so you can do that here on YouTube, or go to the bottom of this blog post here at omgenomics.com/bash-intro. And I'm going to put the video here at the top of the blog post as well, so that you can have the code and the video together. Thank you for watching the OMGenomics show. This was a quick introduction to Bash, and if you want more videos like this, you can sign up for email updates at the bottom of that blog post, omgenomics.com/bash-intro, or by going to omgenomics.com/subscribe and sign up for email updates there. If you have any questions from this episode, I can answer them in the comments on YouTube or on the blog post itself, and I hope to see you next time on the OMGenomics show.